It's not over yet, folks. I thought it was, but it's not. Because I thought Toto said it was done. He said it to our faces! And now we're in a situation where it's Red Bull who look like the rational ones. When Toto Wolff told us on Wednesday that George Russell and Kimi Antonelli were the team's main priority, that sounded like the Verstappen-to-Mercedes rumours had finally been put to bed. No big surprises, he said. Maybe that was the surprise, that Max joining Mercedes was no longer a big surprise. At this point, it just feels like a running gag, doesn't it? And the only thing out of all of this has been truly debunked is that they indeed did not meet within Sardinia, because, as both men had said, they like to go there for holidays. Because we got to think about it from this way, for multi-millionaires like Max, like Toto, just popping down to Sardinia for a few hours, be it on a super yacht or on your own private jet, that's just water off a duck's back. That's something that I, or you, can never probably fathom. But still, this whole saga, it's just completely taken a life of its own, and it's so hard to try and fathom. However, there does seem to be a very interesting little twist in all of this, which might provide a little bit more novel thinking. That maybe it's Red Bull who are starting to temper things in their own ways, be it through Max and, of course, the new team principal, and now maybe Mercedes are the ones that are left holding the bag. Now, look, could you see Max at Mercedes eventually? Well, okay, we just got to get the colours right here, people. Yeah, well, possibly. Because if Red Bull's restructuring efforts and good faith that both parties have at the moment turns out to provide absolutely no fruit whatsoever, then Max may have no choice but to go to the team that can indeed provide him what he wants the most, a fast car. But unlike Lewis's heart-driven move to go to Ferrari, this is a very, very different story. Max's heart and head are very much torn at the moment. Because you got to remember here, Hamilton did not jump at the first sign of trouble. He did stick it out for a good long while, at least 2 whole seasons with a W13 and 14 that clearly weren't playing ball and were not going to be offering him that 8th world title. Eventually he did make the call, and we are where we are right now. And granted, Max has had a troubled season and a bit, but he is still in contention for wins. He's had a couple this year, he has been on the podium quite a few times, and he is able to stick the car on pole. It's not all doom and gloom. This isn't a situation where Max would be very lucky to get the car on the 3rd or 4th row at every single event. No. They can still take a cheeky punt and get it in the first couple of rows, and most importantly, like I touched upon just a moment ago, Max's heart still lies with Red Bull. Ideally, he would like to remain there until he retires from Formula 1. That's his ideal. Whether or not that actually remains the absolute ideal, that's another thing entirely. Because in terms of the overall environment of Red Bull and the culture of Red Bull, it's something that really clicks with Max Verstappen, and you can sense from his comments around the media day events of the Spa weekend, he is feeling a new energy amidst the team with Laurent Mekies in charge. Something different to what Christian Horner could offer, despite both men remaining on good terms. They still talk, and I think Christian wished him good luck, and the same for Yuki. And speaking of Christian, one thing that did get people a little bit jittery during his very packed press conference yesterday within the Red Bull Energy Station was the matter of said former boss. Many reckon that his departure was a major bargaining chip in securing Max's services irrespective of car performance for just that little bit longer. Well, it might have made some people happy within the Verstappen camp, namely maybe Max's manager and Max's dad, but for Max himself, he remains stone-faced on the subject, so here is what he said for your consideration. I don't think it'll matter at all for my decision in the future. At the end, the only thing that matters is that we work on the car and make it as fast as we can make it. The last 1.5 years have not been where we want to be. Now we try to be more competitive. This year a little bit, but for sure also with the new regulations. Now, this suggests to me that at this point, Max has decided to give up on the whole affair and has now become, just like us, an observer rather than an active participant. That perhaps if anyone's hoping to get yet another word out of him about this subject, then you got another thing coming. So quite frankly, people, it's best not to ask him about this ever again. And I am really glad he did this. And also, him using the word we a lot, not just I, not talking about the first person. That's quite telling about where his heart indeed lies. Again, his heart lies at Red Bull's feet, because it places him inside the team's inner circle rather than outside it looking for a lifeline elsewhere. He's sharing responsibility in where the team is right now and where it might go. He's not distancing himself at all. That's his heart taking the wheel. His head very much the passenger for the time being, because he probably is having a bit of a headache. That sense of ownership is reinforced by his praise for new boss Laurent Mekies and his description of Red Bull as a second family many times in the past. But there could be a rest stop coming up soon, depending on what happens next year, because if it becomes absolutely obvious that no matter what Max and Red Bull have tried to do, that the RB22 is simply not aerodynamically competitive enough, or the Red Bull Ford powertrain unit is simply not up to snuff in terms of power circuits, and therefore it's just too slow, then a decision might have to be made as to who gets in the steering wheel, or Max just simply gets out the car and waits for someone else to pick him up. Because his allegiance is to winning machinery, not any particular team or management division. So yes, he is staying with Red Bull for the time being, but it's not like he's shut everything down completely. He's just deciding to take a backseat mentality to all of this, and just getting on with maybe trying to salvage at least a smidgen of a challenge of a world champion, his 5th one. So I do think Red Bull has bought themselves some time, but they do have to use that time to get more lap time, or less lap time. Yeah, no, less lap time. That doesn't sound particularly groundbreaking to me, Law. What's your point? Oh, sorry, I've got to change the light there. Just let's put that back. Let's put that back, yeah. Red Bull, back to Red Bull. What I'm trying to get at here is that this has really been a surprising twist, and it's certainly made things a little bit more complex, but not in the way you might necessarily think. Because I thought the matter had died down the last week, because you heard about Nelson Piquet Jr.'s confident mutterings about Max going to Mercedes being walked back considerably. Then there was Toto saying that George and Max were the main priority, but then you get all this happening, and then of course we've got what the Mercedes drivers have been saying, which made things really, really interesting and has put George back in the limelight for all the wrong reasons again, but we'll get to that later in the video, so do keep watching, and if you like what I've got to say, then definitely like the video. Because again, I feel like Red Bull are understanding the assignment, and Laurent Mekies, the new team principal, is understanding the assignment. There is no more grandstanding to be had with this team boss. Thank goodness. Because with Laurent, you're getting a very circumspect individual. You're not getting yet another copy of Christian Horner saying, oh, you know, something, something, one-liner, something, something, give it a go, and something, something, analogy to funny witticism that only British people understand. Because immediately you can sense that Laurent and Max are on the same page in his first media day outing for the team. So here is that for your consideration. And don't worry, if you are wanting to know about the Mercedes side of things, because that's particularly juicy, I will be getting to that in a moment, or you can just look at the timestamp here and skip to that. Okay. The truth is, Red Bull is hugely committed to Max, and the way we can be hugely committed to Max is by giving him the best possible car. And giving him the best possible car is what every single person in the company wants more than anything else. So that's where the effort is made, really, and the rest will be a consequence. But of course, Max is central to the project, and is key to the project, and we need his magic at the racetrack. I think the team has everything to do that. It has the means, it has the spirit, and more importantly, it has the talents. So in short, yeah, I think we have everything to be able to give that to our drivers. Now that is the kind of motivational speech that you need. Because what this also proves is that Mekies is no showman. He is no Christian Horner. He is going to be a facilitator to whatever people within the team need to do to change the fudging car. And that's exactly what Red Bull needs right now. No more drama, no more PR warfare, just pure performance. That is exactly what they gotta do. Generate more downforce in the slow stuff. And already, I'm quite certain Max is smiling a little more than he was a couple of weeks ago. The new leader speaks in collective engineering-led terms, yes, that revolve around resources, data, and shared responsibility. We got a little bit of that from Christian Horner, but that wasn't his main modus operandi. He was very much trying to get back-page headlines with his witticism. Emotional pleas and defiant criticism, protesting left, right, and centre. And speaking of that, by the way, the FIA will be thankfully looking into that, maybe charging more to be issuing protests to other teams. But one thing is absolutely certain, is that Mekies is looking for credibility within the team, and Horner was trying to find credibility outside of the team, to make people like them and not hate them. Well, I'm sorry, Christian, but for a lot of people out there, they very much despise Red Bull. And if the team want to keep Max, the former, what Mekies is doing right now, is exactly what will appeal to Max, because I'm pretty sure that Verstappen was very much sick and tired of headlines being generated and Red Bull being in the public eye for the wrong reasons. They want to be known for having a very fast car. And also, I got the sense that Horner's shtick was very much not appealing with the new contingent of Formula One fans and enjoyers. It was very much out of step with all of the other more engineering, technically minded team principles that we've been seeing a lot of lately. Horner, in a way, stood out. Sure, You could argue that Toto has his own fair share of witticisms. Here's one recently that he tends to like saying, yes, that's not exactly our most intelligent call. But in terms of talking, I think Red Bull will be doing a lot less of that, and ideally Mekies would like the car to be doing most of the talking instead of, well, himself. And that is a very, very good sign indeed, because I still suspect that Verstappen's future will be a talking point for a little bit longer, but I do think that Verstappen himself is not going to be fueling that particular flame, that he will very much be focusing on the job at hand. And that maybe he's not desperately looking for an alternative. So in terms of the negotiations that are happening with Mercedes, which are happening, by the way, thanks very much for that tip-off, George, I don't think they are as much of a priority for Verstappen as they were maybe this time a couple of months ago. And Toto's prognosis of all of these talks, they're looking a little bit less rosy than they used to be. And also, I do believe that there is a little bit of a power struggle going on within the Mercedes camp now, what with all the big major shareholders who may particularly want to have Max Verstappen at their team. And now maybe Toto's starting to get second thoughts, and the biggest phrase, one-liner I have right now is, be careful what you wish for. Sure, Max may claim that Horner's departure will not matter in his eyes, but I do believe that will change in the fullness of time, when it becomes clear that the atmosphere within the team is more geared toward finding optimum performance and technically driven. I do believe Red Bull might become a little bit more boring, conventional, traditional, very much just like a typical Formula One team. Just take yourself to look at Haas. We all thought that at the beginning of 2024, Haas would become irrelevant, boring, dull, without Gunther Steiner there going, yes, exactly, what am I going to say about the Fuck match? Without that personality, we all thought that people wouldn't care about Haas. But look where we are right now. People are happy that Haas is happy. So maybe the same thing will happen to Red Bull. The controversial figurehead is gone, someone in a little bit more muted is in his place, and is there to genuinely help rebuild the team. And we've gotten Haas to the point where Gene Haas is actually proud to be repping it. But at this very second, even just a couple of weeks after Horner's dismissal, we have a team. Max and Laurent are very keen to get their head down and solve the problem all together, unified. Red Bull seem actually unified again. They don't feel divided. Which I can imagine for any Red Bull fan right now, they are just going, yes, thank you! That is the Mekies effect already. I know that some people in the comments might think he's just a weak individual, he's not strong like Christian. Well, that particular strength of Christian's did foster a lot of division. That it was clearly time for Red Bull to change itself, and I think it will change for the better. Just look at what happened at Racing Bulls, and what will continue to happen with Alan Permain in there, keen to keep the status quo there. But yes, Red Bull have definitely calmed things down, whereas with Mercedes, okay, we're going to get back to that particular test knot there. There we go. I feel like they're the ones who are going to be springing a few more surprises in relation to this story. They're the ones bringing all the intrigue and doubt to the table, and I think it's gone a little bit loosey-goosey. Of course, there is paddock gossip, much like how there's gossip online. We all thought Toto Wolff was the sole person responsible for his drivers. That's what he said just a couple of days ago, that it might have been the end of the matter and that we could all take our spanners of speculation and go home. Well, not so. Throughout all the years where Mercedes and Red Bull were busy just taking bites out of each other, you always got the sense that Mercedes were the more superior viewing ones, the stoic ones, the ones that would look down, akin to how Seymour Skinner would look down at children and just go, pathetic, before then doing it all over again at the next race. A constant flurry of blows between them, a rivalry. Yes, it did get very stinky and it got very, very bitter at times, but other than that, it was something that kept both teams motivated and innovating. But now though, Mercedes haven't got that anymore. Who are they going to be using as a competitive yardstick? McLaren? Well, no. They are wiping the floor with just about everybody at the moment, and all that Toto is saying about McLaren at the moment is saying, yes, I probably shouldn't have given them an engine, that wasn't the most intelligent of our calls. Yeah, he's got his tail between his legs, Toto, and all the while, Zak Brown is thumping his chest and slapping people's back and saying about the competition, we kicked their ass! Do I need to change the... I can't be bothered. So as of now, you would think that Mercedes, having won the battle and seemingly got rid of Christian Horner and maybe knocked Red Bull down a peg or two, that would be that. That perhaps they would just focus on the lineup they've got, look to 2026, and then go from there. Because next year is going to be a very, very complex one that all the teams really need to be concentrating on, instead of the finaglings of driver contracts as of now. Well, now with Red Bull tempering things and Max calming things down, saying he wants no part of it, Laurent Mekies realizing that, hey, we probably should be changing the car. Now this is bringing Mercedes into sharp relief, and they're the ones that are looking like they're scrambling around trying to figure out some kind of a solution, and that maybe there could easily be some conflicts behind the scenes, and that maybe Toto Wolff could have bitten off more than he wanted to chew. That perhaps something he desperately wanted has now completely left his hands. It's them supplying a steady stream of surprises since Lewis Hamilton stunned the grid with his Ferrari switch announced last year. In fact, you could argue that that was their Mercedes Daniel Ricciardo moment. Commentators likened it to a hole Mercedes had only 12 months to fill, which left the Silver Hours in an unfamiliar reactive phase, not since Nico Rosberg's surprise retirement nigh on a decade previously. But luckily back then, Wolff was able to patch the hole quickly with Valtteri Bottas since he was managing the Finnish driver at the time, and then all turned out okay for several years. But this year, it's not quite as okay. Because we all thought it was going to be quite simple at the beginning of 2025, I recall around the Australian Grand Prix when there were little bits of mutterings regarding Max going to Mercedes because the RB20 didn't turn out to be that great, the RB21 wasn't all that strong in pre-season testing, but Toto quickly said, yes, I'm going to be stopping flirting, and great, fantastic, they're not going to be pursuing Max. But then it kept going. Toto's silence really allowed other peoples and entities, including myself and many other pundits and online news sites, to fill in the gaps. Clearly, Toto, by trying to learn from what he did last time with Valtteri Bottas, he had not learned ultimately a thing, because now remaining silent to us all, it allowed us to really speculate about George and Kimi to the point where the young Italian was maybe considered being a bargaining chip for Alpine, one of Mercedes' brand new customers. And we all remember what Valtteri Bottas said, describing the entire situation where he had no clue what he was going to be doing the following year as a pain in the ass. Well, I can easily imagine it's been a pain in the ass for Russell and Antonelli, but they've been trying to keep a brave face on the matter, and for that, I respect them. George, the team leader, stonkingly great job. Kimi Antonelli, rookie year? Sure, he's had a very unfortunate run of it as of late, but getting a podium and a sprint pole and over 60 points to your name in your very first season, not too shabby, and getting yourself embedded within a top-tier team for maybe the long term. And also, yeah, did you see that whole thing in the press conference when Lewis and Kimi were in the same room? Lewis found the whole situation rather amusing, joking, saying, hey, don't worry, Kimi, I can give you some pointers with Toto. There was a little bit of banter there. It was cute, but you also sense that probably behind the scenes, Hamilton's looking at all of this and just going, oh yeah, I was there. Because both Mercedes drivers are adding a very intriguing element to the story, but in very different ways. And I don't think these ways are very much appealing to Russell. It's certainly enough to keep pundits happy in regards to the overall mystery now that Red Bull have taken to the workshop. Yeah, Russell's words via Planet F1 underline how little control he feels he has right now. He stresses that there is still no contract on the table, and that he will react to what the team wishes to do. A line that makes him sound like a junior applicant rather than an incumbent. His stance right now, which looks calm on the surface, but deep down probably he feels a little bit powerless, is very curious thinking indeed. He's probably wondering whether or not Mercedes actually values him as their lead man for 2026, the brand new regulation cycle. And I appreciate George keeping a brave face throughout all of this, just doing what he can, plugging away, making a really good strong effort to be the best of the rest in 2025 amidst Piastri and Norris just taking names left, right and centre. I really respect that. He's trying to trust the team, but I think it's starting to become a bit annoying and frustrating and a little bit scary. Antonelli's tone could be not more different. Asked about the same contract gap in the press conference, the 18-year-old said that he's not really worried because the team is giving me time to grow. That confidence rests on the fact that Mercedes already took a gamble on him when it promoted him all the way from Formula Regional just 18 months ago. His laid-back assurance might make the outside world wonder whether Wolff has already decided that the fresh-faced Italian is now non-negotiable, and that maybe Toto will be fully focused on maybe getting the Finnish stalwart instead a seat in F1 next year. Granted, Kimi being that little bit more calm than he had been in the past couple of weeks is probably welcome news to some of you, that maybe Toto isn't going to be pulling an absolute bizarre move where he gives the rookie a leg up and then kicks him down to a smaller team again, but I'm pretty sure that an equal number of fans out there will be a little bit more scared again that Russell has yet reiterated that there is still no more contract on the table. And I've always said that swapping either of them out would be a hugely unjust affair. Because they both get on with each other, they're both Mercedes coded, and they're young. They could easily be working together for the next 4 or 5 years, easy. And you might be arguing because there have been other rumours suggesting that it's George who is causing all of the drama because, simply put, he is not playing the game that either Toto or the Mercedes board might want him to play. Kind of similar to what Lewis was doing regarding the length of his contract. Some people say that he's looking for a 2+1 deal or a straight up 3-year deal. Others are suggesting that Mercedes are offering him a 1+1 deal, so he is there for next year, but maybe not for the year after that. And that is something that George does not want. Then, of course, there are mutterings about him wanting a bigger salary, which is fairly understandable because he has been able to do a lot and prove many things, especially as a team leader, but that's neither here or there. We're talking about the length of the contract. I appreciate Russell wanting to stand his ground and be seen for what he thinks that he's worth, but it also really depends on what Mercedes thinks is a priority. And then you get this sudden report that maybe the Mercedes board have gotten really sick and tired of Russell maybe playing stalemate with all of this, stonewalling the matter, and that maybe the power to change whoever is in that seat might be taken out of Toto's hands. Because via F1 Oversteer, this report claims that Mercedes-Benz CEO Olo Kalenius could overrule Toto if Russell's contract demands drag on, if the two men can't thrash out some sort of compromise, and push for Verstappen in a seemingly no-holds-barred bid to secure his services. Money seemingly no object. Sure, you might be arguing with your own spanner of speculation that, oh, Law, how can you be sure of this? This is probably just boardroom utterings, it may not be fully substantiated, but the fact that this is even being considered, that maybe there is a supposition that Toto's words may not be the final word on this matter, is enough to provide a little bit of intrigue in of itself, that maybe there could easily be a power struggle going on behind the scenes of an otherwise really composed team that we all thought had their ducks in a row. That perhaps despite Toto being a very major shareholder owning a third of the Formula One team, that perhaps the Mercedes side of the thing, who also owns a third, and then maybe Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos, who also own the other third, could gang up against Wolff and overrule him 2-1. Sure, it might end up in him getting what he wants, that being Max Verstappen, but probably not in the manner that he would like it to be. In a manner where he could maybe send George Russell off to another team on good terms, no hard feelings, let's be friends for a good long while, and joke about it in a decade or two. And that's what I've sensed from Wolff for a really, really long time, that he really does not like being hated, that he wants to end relationships if he has to, on good terms, and give people some sort of exit velocity strategy. If the Mercedes board take matters into their own hands and thrust said palms into the Max negotiations, it could result in the working relationship between the Austrian and the Brit turning cold, or worse, sour. Yes, I do believe that if this were to be the case and George is ousted for 2026, he would still remain professional and no ill will toward the actual working people of Mercedes. But if Toto hoped to have a good friendship with him afterwards, I don't see that happening. Because look to all of the other situations where Toto has had to deal with some kind of exit strategy, like with Rosberg, like with Bottas, like with Lewis. He's been able to come up with a way with all three drivers actually finished their working relationships with him, and they remain good friends, including with Lewis. You would easily think that both men would just walk away from one another and have nothing to do with each other ever again. But no, you constantly hear from Lewis and Toto that they still keep in touch. They're still good friends. They still text each other really regularly. That is a really masterful thing to do, especially in the manner where Lewis and Mercedes parted, that they still talk to each other and really well. You got to give Toto credit for that, and Lewis too. That they were able to come to some sort of agreement and go like, yeah, it's probably a way to end this, isn't it? Ah, yes, okay. I just feel like that he might want to do the same thing for George if it comes to it, but if it all happens in a way where Wolff is overruled and Mercedes have their own way and then George is ousted despite all of the loyalty that he'd given the team and him being around since he was a teen, then... But either way, Russell and Antonelli have now become the central characters in this new act. Their own negotiations, Wolff's publicly stated plans, and the boardroom wildcard, supposedly, which has come about. Each fresh quote from either driver now doubles as an update on where those threads sit, whilst Red Bull, well, they've easily called the jets on the subject. And I think the relative radio silence that we'll get from Red Bull, them focusing on the RB21 solely, is a bit of a tactical move and a response from Mercedes potentially wishing to stick the dagger in Red Bull, take out Christian Horner, and silence a long-standing rival for good. Well, it seems like Red Bull might be clapping back. Because it's Mercedes who are causing all the noise right now, and someone might be just about to lose their seat. Who? Well, we shall see. But no surprises over at Haas though, since Esteban Ocon has made it quite plain that he is in a good place right now, and might have gotten in just in time for a future refresh with Toyota. To find out why I'm so certain that Ocon has become a very different person to what we thought he was at Alpine, watch this video next, straight after this one.